Hey everyone, so we are back in ZBrush. For sculpting the skin details, I'm using a ZBrush feature called Geometry HD. It's one of ZBrush's most useful features. If you subdivide your model too many times, eventually you're running out of resources. Your computer will slow down. And what Geometry HD does is that it only activates the subdivided model for a certain area that you're working on. So how to use it? First, I'm adding 3 regular subdivisions, and in the Geometry HD, I am adding another 3 Geometry HD subdivisions. But when you add new Geometry HD subdivisions, nothing happens, just a number here. But I'm going to show you how to activate Geometry HD. But before that, let's add some layers. It's not necessary to add layers, but I prefer to record my progress in different layers. So if I want to go back and make a change, make some changes that I made more intense or less intense, I can just change the value of that layer or just delete that layer, duplicate that layer. Just makes things easier. Now we have our layers. To turn on HD mode, Geometry HD mode, just hover on the area of the model that you want to work on, like here, for example, and press A. Now, the area inside the circle is in Geometry HD mode. Just remember that whenever you turn on HD mode, before making any changes, make sure that you save a morph type. Because if you make a mistake, instead of going back, undoing everything, you just use the morph brush to just undo the changes in that specific area. So here's how I create my own custom brushes inside ZBrush. First, I crop document. Then I draw a plane to the canvas. I subdivide it a few times. Then I click on Make Polymesh 3D. And again, after that, I'm subdividing more. Around 4 or 5 million polygons is enough. So here I want to make a custom brush for adding single pose to skin. If you look at some macro photographs of human skin, it has a very simple pattern. It's basically like a series of dots that are connected with lines together. So we're making one of those dots, and we are adding those lines on top of it. Also adding some volume to the pore. We don't want to make the skin pores look too flat. You should have some volume. Now, grab the standard brush and in the alpha menu, click on Grab Doc. So this takes a screenshot of the document and adds it as an alpha map to that brush. We can also make an icon for this brush using a BPR render path. So to make the icon, make a new document, draw a sphere to the canvas, and using the brush that I just made, I am sculpting that on top of the sphere. and make a render pass, BPR render pass. Save a copy of that render pass and assign it to that brush using the select icon button. Now we have the brush, we have the icon. We need to save this brush and have it loaded in the brush menu every time open up ZBrush. To do that, you need to save this brush in the brush presets in the startup folder. It might change depending on the version you're using, depending on your operating system. Now, let's grab the custom single pore brush that we made. And I have tried this method many times. I have failed many times. If it's your first time, you might not get the size of those pores right. But with a little practice, with patience, and a couple of failures, you'll eventually get there. Okay. Okay, from here on out, it's just a boring and repetitive process of adding these skin pores one by one. Takes a couple of hours to cover the entire face. Let's just speed it up. Okay. We are done with the skin pores. Now, I have this custom brush, which is just a simple combination of spray mode and alpha number 8 with a little adjustment to the alpha modifications. It gives this organic looking pattern. It's very similar to human skin. And I use it a lot. So I'm adding it on top of the pose. I'm also adding it to the areas that we haven't touched. You can add it around the ears, add it to the neck, and everywhere, but with different intensities. Okay, there is this second noise brush, which is very similar. It's a combination of color spray and alpha number 60, which is more directional noise. And it's very useful for certain areas, like the forehead, that we have those horizontal lines, and the chin. We also have some lines here. Around the eyes, the kind of a circular direction. The lips, more vertical directions. Okay, now here is my favorite brush, as you can see from the icon. I use this brush to add deeper lines and wrinkles to skin. It's just a standard brush. It's nothing crazy, just a standard brush with alpha number, I think it's 43 from what it looks like. I think it's 43, and just a little tweak made to the alpha adjust curve. So I added this point in the middle of the curve to make the um, to make the lines sharper. It works kind of like damn standard brush, but without pinching the surface. So when you use a damn standard brush to make a cut, it also pinches the surface inside. And that's not what we want to have when we are painting the displacement map. Here I'm using this brush to add the forehead wrinkles according to the reference. Just use as many references as you have, because you can't just memorize all these lines, all these different skin imperfections. You need to use as many references as you have access to. Also, make sure you don't make these lines too deep, because that's going to make the character look much older. Using the same brush, I'm adding the wrinkles around the eyes, and eyes are a little tricky. It takes time to master these wrinkles. It's just something that you have to practice and learn from experience. So basically, I am just copying what I see in the reference. I am spotting those wrinkles in the reference. I'm just copying it onto the model. For the lips, using the same brush, I'm adding a series of lines, mostly vertical lines, with some horizontal lines, but I am adding these lines in different intensities. Some of them are deeper, some of them are just touch the surface, they don't go too deep. So we just keep using the same technique until we have all the wrinkles on his face covered. Wrinkles around the ears, wrinkles on the neck, wrinkles around the nose. Now, using another custom noise brush, I am adding more bumps and noise to the skin, but in higher scale. Using morph targets, I am randomizing the intensity of those bumps of the skin. We don't want to make the skin look too rough. We can also use the standard brush in drag rect mode to add those bumps and add pimples to the skin individually. So I'm adding these kind of like pimple skin bumps, whatever you call it. I am adding those in different spots. I'm adding in random spots of the face. These are all based on many references that I have collected and I have studied. So just need to look at references, look at not necessarily just references from the subject. No, if your subject is a historical figure and you don't have high quality photos, you just need to look at any reference, any. If it's a male subject, go search for references of close-ups of male skin. It's a female, look references for female skin, and so on. It doesn't have to be the exact person. Some characteristics of human skin are very similar. So there are lines, there are patterns, there are color patterns, there are bumps in some areas that just need to know direction of the muscles, the fat under the skin. Okay, for the final step, I am adding more depth to some of the forms around some of the wrinkles that we have added. I'm adding more volume to them. And also I'm recording it to a separate layer. So we can tweak it later. And here we are. Finally, to export the displacement map, just like before, go to Z plugin menu. In the multimedia exporter, highlight displacement and change the resolution to 8K. Don't export it in 4K. Unlike the albedo map, I told you can export it in 4K, but displacement map is best if you just export it in the highest resolution. There are a couple of settings that we need to make sure we set right. In the export options, enable adaptive, change mid to 0. Also turn on 32-bit in EXR format, which is the format that we need to use for Arnold. Also, since we're going to be using subdivision level 1 in Maya, so that should be the same subdivision level that we export the displacement map. Because when you subdivide your model, you also smooth your UV map. So if you export your map in higher subdivisions, there's slight changes between those UVs. Okay, and now that wraps up this video. In the next one, I'm going to show you how to add hair to a character using XGen. See you.